and John Walters, voice of Iowa State athletics, with us on 365 Sports. And we had John scheduled because of Brock Purdy, and we will do that and talk about that quite a bit here right off the top, but also because of Saturday night's crazy in Waco. We'll get into that Iowa State-Baylor game and all that went with it. John, thank you very much for your time with Paul Catalina. I'm David Smoak. What makes Brock Purdy tick?
I think it's relationship with God. Honestly, he just really is a grounded guy. Brock is not a person who allows himself to get caught up in a lot of the stuff going on around him, which is, I think, one of the reasons he's having the success that he is, because there's so many critics out there, and if he was listening to that stuff, it would probably drive him nuts. But he doesn't worry about that. He worries about what his teammates think of him, what his coaches think of him, and he is really grounded in his faith. So when he has highs and lows along the path, and he can get caught in the highs and lows for sure, like anybody else. He's human. But he doesn't allow it to bring down his ability, his belief in his own ability. He really has that belief. He has the confidence that he's a very good player, and so much of it is just grounded in, look, I'm the same guy every day. I'm not changing. And I think that's really what's allowed him to have success.
John, nobody really thought that he was going to have this kind of start to his NFL career, and he was Mr. Relevant. Every team, even the 49ers probably didn't even have that much faith. It just, they took a chance on him with that Mr. Irrelevant pick. But if you look back at, a 4-year starter and all these things, is he kind of proof that sometimes you can get caught up in what happens in T-shirts and shorts and not what happens on film?
I think he absolutely is proof of that. That's a great point. And I think, you got all those measurables, right? His hand size is this, and his, he's 6'1", and he doesn't have long arms or what. Okay, is he good at football or not? He's good at football, and that ought to count for something. And, we see this all the time in the NBA too, where guys, it's so much about the measurables. And then at some point, a guy comes along and just is really good at playing the game, and that needs to count for more than it probably does. And but Brock had 100 touchdowns that he accounted for at the college level. He set 32 school records. I mean, he was 16-1 against Big 12 opponents in Jack Trice Stadium. 16-1. I mean, Iowa State doesn't do that, in its history. And so he's a winner, and he was a winner at Iowa State. And I'm not surprised that he's a winner in the NFL and that he's doing well. I'm just shocked, like everybody else, that he's doing so much so soon. But I'm not surprised that he worked hard and made a team. And, I think one thing that really told you a lot about Brock Purdy was the day he was drafted, okay? He's Mr. Irrelevant. He's the last pick in the draft, which, by the way, Disney doesn't even have to embellish that when they make the movie. They can just say, all right, we don't have to act like he was the third to last pick, but we'll act like he was the last pick. No, he was the last pick of the draft. But when he was drafted, he celebrated like crazy with his family. He was super excited about it, just to get the opportunity. He just wanted that door cracked for him because he knew what he could do. And so I think that tells you a lot about Brock, that he wasn't down about being Mr. Irrelevant or, having to wait that long. He just wanted his chance, and he got it.
So when did you notice something special about him during his career at Iowa State? Was there a moment, I know a single moment, but was there something where you were like, yeah, he's just got the it factor?
Well, honestly, when he first played as a freshman, he came into a game in Stillwater, Oklahoma, and it was his first real amount of time playing, right? Because he had played a little bit of snap here and there, but Kyle Kempt had started that year as the starting quarterback for Iowa State, got hurt in the Iowa game. Zeb Nolan took it over, who ended up being a quarterback at North Dakota State. But anyway, Zeb came in, tried to take it over, struggled. And with Iowa State 1-3 on the season, Stillwater against the top 25 Oklahoma State team, Zeb had a 3-and-out on his first possession. They bring Brock in, and Iowa State scored touchdowns on 5 of the next 6 possessions. It's like, holy cow. I mean, what have we got here? So it was kind of right away. And then he just kept winning that year and had a great freshman year, and he just kept building on it. And, there were some ups and downs along the way. There were times where he maybe tried to do a little too much, and that hurt him. But, he was trying to put a team on his shoulders, and I think one of the things that he's learned from that whole experience is you can't do that. You just have to do your role And obviously that's what he's doing so well with the 49ers, is really accentuating all those weapons around him, doing a terrific job of just being the distributor and getting it in the hands of all those great players.
He, he has those moments, and I'm sure that the Brock Purdy moments where he's probably maybe a little too confident, but who doesn't? And like, it's weird, like all the knocks on him are like, sometimes he throws interceptions. Well, yeah, like there's only a couple who really don't. So it seems weird that people like often stretch for these things. Do you ever hear that and kind of giggle?
I do, because you want a guy who has the confidence to go make a play. And I get trying to stay within the system and doing what you're asked and all that. And Brock's really good at that. He studies film like a banshee. He is good about making sure that he understands what it is that Kyle Shanahan wants from that offense. But at the same time, he's a guy that can improvise and make a play. And I think one of the things, I was visiting with David Lombardi from The Athletic, who covers the 49ers for The Athletic, and he said, one thing that I think a lot of teams, because I said to him, why did so many teams miss on Brock Purdy? And he felt like one of the things they really missed when they were evaluating him was just his quickness within a little 10-yard box. Not, game-changing speed, not wild athleticism, but just his ability to get away from a pass rush. And he did that at Iowa State. He didn't always have the best offensive lines in front of him, and he had to scramble a lot and get out of situations and create something and keep his eyes up the field. He was really good at that. But in doing so, you are going to make some mistakes, obviously. You're gonna throw an interception now and then. But if you're just going through the game like a robot and you're not attempting to make a play, well, you're probably not going to make any plays, and you're going to cost your team the game. So, yes, sometimes it backfires, but more often than not, it's turned into him being able to make a play for his teammates. And, man, all I have to do is listen to what they say about him. I don't care what some guy in Johnston, Iowa thinks of him. I care about what Trent Williams thinks about him and what Christian McCaffrey thinks about him and what Kyle Shanahan thinks about him. They all rave about him. George Kittle, they all love this guy. So they're the ones that would know.
So, there was this game Saturday night, John, and when we talked about having you on the show, this was not even a part of it, right? This was about discussing Brock Purdy. And then Saturday night at the Foster Pavilion happened, Iowa State, Baylor, and what was just a bizarre night of basketball. What was your impression when all of it ended?
Well, from the Iowa State perspective, just kind of a bummer to not be able to get that shot off in time, because it was a great play to set up Milan Momcilovic for that three. But in reality, Iowa State was in a fortunate position because the clock operator started the clock early, that they had to stop things and let Iowa State inbound, because I don't think they would have gotten anywhere near that good of a shot to begin with if the play just played out. So they were fortunate in that regard. Obviously, there were the 3 technical fouls on the Baylor bench, and I'm not sitting close enough to see what Scott Drew said or hear what he said, or his assistant coach for that matter. That was the one that surprised me the most, was when the assistant coach got one too. But I wasn't able to really gather what was going on there, but it was a strange game. There's no doubt about it. It had a little bit of everything, but I didn't walk away from it feeling like, oh man, Iowa State deserved to win. They could have won, but I'm not sure they should have won. And sometimes you walk away feeling like, okay, they should have won that game, and that wasn't one. I mean, it was just two good Big 12 teams battling. When Iowa State did get on that 20-0 run, I really thought they might be able to close the deal and finish it out. But to Baylor's credit, they went man-to-man. I thought that was a great move. They defended better in the man-to-man than they did in the zone down the stretch, and they were able to claw back and win the game. So a great game, two really good Big 12 teams, two teams that are in the top 20 for a reason, and Baylor was able to pull it out.
So I call it a battering ram, the schedule. Like Baylor tomorrow night plays Tech, and then it's KU, and then, of course, Iowa State. How do you describe the Big 12 in men's basketball, if you could put like a phrase on it?
Battering ram is good. I like that. Gauntlet's one you'll hear a lot too. I mean, yeah, it is tough. I mean, and you can play really good basketball. I think Baylor experienced this, playing really good basketball and still having a 3-game losing streak.
Yep.
I mean, 2 of those losses were in overtime. One was on a buzzer beater by Tyrese Hunter against Texas. And so you can, as TJ Altenberger has said to me many times this year, you can play really well and still get beat. We knew somebody was going to lose the Houston-Kansas game, right? And it was likely, although it turns out that Kansas really kind of dominated that game. But I think back to Texas-Houston last week, that was an absolute dogfight. Somebody's going to lose, right? But both teams played great. And I think what's happening is everybody's beating each other up. It's okay, because when the dust settles and the NCAA tournament bids are announced, the Big 12 is going to do very well, probably have 8, 9, maybe even 10 teams. And those teams, I think, are going to go into competition against these other leagues and do very well. Now, sometimes you get proven wrong on that, but I think the teams in this league are really, really good, and they're just kind of sharpening each other for having a really good March. And I'm hoping that's the way it works out.
John, I was at the Kansas-Houston game, and, if you gave Kansas a normal shooting percentage for the day, it's probably a lot closer game, but they were making every shot. Houston only turned the ball over 3 times. You do that, you win a game going away, but Kelvin Sampson said after the game, he's like, yeah, don't really think we played all that bad. It's just, we're here in Allen Fieldhouse, and it's a different animal.
So true, and it's so hard to shoot that kind of a percentage against Houston. But if you look, I was looking at the Big 12 only games the other day, the stats for Big 12 only games, and Kansas is shooting like 52% from the floor. They're a very good offensive basketball team. Nobody else is anywhere near 52% on the season in Big 12 games. And so they did what they do. They're a very good team. I think the development of Johnny Furphy has made that Kansas team really dangerous. And, you think back to Iowa State beating them at Hilton Coliseum about a week ago, and that shapes up as a really good win for the Cyclones. And so, it's just crazy to think about this race. And, Houston, Kansas, I think are at the top of the league, but I don't think there's some huge drop-off to the next teams. And I think there's a bunch of teams jockeying for position, and we'll see how it all plays out in the end.
John, one more question and go back to Brock Purdy. And thank you so much for your time. Glad we've been able to get you on the show on the week of the Super Bowl. What do you think a Super Bowl win would not change him based on who we think or what you've said he is, but what would it change as far as the way people look at him? Will they still come up with excuses?
I think they will, because I think human nature is that people want to be right. If they said they didn't think Brock Purdy was an NFL quarterback, then they wait for him to throw an incompletion and interception, and they say, see,
yep,
I told you so. But if you look at the body of work, the stats, I'd encourage anybody to go follow David Lombardi of The Athletic on Twitter. The guy has numbers out there that are just remarkable on Purdy, and what he's done historically is incredible. And so, yeah, there's mistakes and bumps in the road along the way, but if you look at the whole body of work, it's like, wow, this guy is doing something really exceptional. And, I think a Super Bowl win hopefully will change a few people's minds, probably not. But if he keeps winning, then sooner or later people are going to just have to say, all right, I was wrong. And I know that's hard for people, but he has proven a lot of doubters wrong already. And I think the thing for Brock, too, that he can't get paid yet, some kind of big bonus for doing things. It's great he got a deal with Toyota. He's starting to get some endorsement deals. That's fantastic. And I think there's not a more marketable guy out there. You talk about putting a Boy Scout at the face of your franchise. You're not going to have him embarrass you in any way. He's going to be a great spokesperson. But, obviously the 49ers, because he's on that rookie cap, they can't even give him more money if they wanted to until after next season. So I think Brock's going to continue to prove himself. And if he can stay healthy, I think he's going to have a long, terrific career. And I'll admit, he found the perfect spot in San Francisco for what he does. And it's a great marriage. And he understands that better than anybody. So I hope he has a long career, and I hope it's all in San Francisco.
John, great stuff. Thank you so much on Brock Purdy, on Iowa State men's basketball, that game Saturday in Waco, but much more. John Walters, voice of Iowa State athletics.